Hey, Brent Porcio here with Alec Fang, and this is the @TopVelocity hashtag pitching tips show season 2. We're cruising along here with some great questions. Finally got a bunch of questions for those from the previous episodes. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, go back and watch that and ask us your questions. We're doing this to answer questions to those in the baseball community that want to learn more about elite pitching, elite throwing. We can even go into elite hitting. We've developed it all here with TopVelocity and a science-based biomechanical system for all the baseball skills. So obviously we're most known for pitching, so a lot of our questions are pitching related, but we're perfectly fine with that. We love talking about pitching, but we can do more if needed. So Alex here from the Taiwan, he's been translating our programs into Mandarin, which is really exciting. So if you're out there and you speak Mandarin and you'd like to learn more about the programs we have translated, reach out to Alex. He's running the TopVelocity Taiwan Instagram account, YouTube account. You can find him that way. You can also go to topvelocity.net/Taiwan and you can check out the TopVelocity programs in Mandarin. Okay, so we got 2 questions today, so here we go. Should I shut down from throwing in the off season at all? If so, for how long? So that's a good question. The problem is, and we're gonna find out what it's like in Taiwan, but in America, we typically overthrow. We play too many games, unfortunately. So the studies show, what do the studies show? We're 8 times more likely to have injury, not 8 times more likely, if we're 5 times more likely to have injury if we play more than 8 months out of the year. So really 2 good seasons is ultimately enough time to pitch. And after that, you really do need to get out of competition. So at the end of the day, we're trying to get out of competition after 8 months of the year. And there's a couple ways we can do that. Ideally, I tell guys, after say you've played 2 seasons, take 2 weeks off, 1 to 2 weeks off. I wouldn't take much more than that off altogether because your body does start to atrophy. So I would then start up in some type of off-season strength and conditioning program. Ultimately, a comprehensive program for whatever you want to work on that off-season, like we do here at TopVelocity, get into the TopVelocity programs. If you don't want to keep throwing, and ultimately we're a drill-based throwing program, so we're not going to be putting a lot of stress on your arm because it's drill-based throwing until we get to preseason and season. If you don't want to do our throwing at all, you can take that out. And the coolest thing is we use a medicine ball approach, which you see them back there, which allows you to still work on the movements and still perfect the movements and refine the biomechanical movements of elite throwing and try to improve upon those with those balls without putting the stress on the arm. It takes the stress off the arm because it's a two-handed throw, more like a bat, really using the trunk more than the arm to throw the ball. So you can start doing those, but you're not putting the stress on the arm. And if you want to wait all the way into say 1 month before preseason, right, which typically preseason is 1 month before your first game, if you want to wait till then to start doing your drill throws with the baseball to kind of ramp up for the preseason, that would be fine. I wouldn't go much past that. Ultimately, maybe start a little earlier than that. When you get to preseason, then you're going to get into your bullpen work and start increasing the volume while decreasing the weight volume, so you can really prepare for all the rigors of throwing through the season. But at the end of the day, we do throw too much, and there's a great company that really helps you monitor that and check your arm health, and that's armcare.com, I would say. Check them out. But I'm curious to ask, Alec, what's it like in Taiwan? I know there's 2 different approaches everywhere, old school, new school. Are the old school approaches in Taiwan very much throw?
Yeah, for sure. They definitely throw a lot. They basically can only take 2 months of the off season, and so their body basically cannot afford that because they are not doing the lifting like the Olympic lifting, so they don't have those kind of power to provide the efficiency in the connecting chain.
Yeah, so it's a lot of wear and tear. So they're really, in that old school approach in Taiwan, it's just so much throwing, they don't even give themselves the time, the energy, the less wear and tear to do much lifting. So they typically overthrow.
Yeah, they believe that practice is everything, so they throw as much as they can and they work hard, but some of them just hurt their arms.
Yeah, so you do see evidence of a lot of wear and tear. Right, and same thing here, but I have a feeling what I've heard is in a lot of the Asian countries where baseball's popular, they typically overthrow, probably even a little bit more than they do in America, would you believe or no?
Yeah, I would say that's
true,
yeah.
Right, so do you find that these new school methods are becoming more accepted in Taiwan as far as using the kinetic chain, better training the kinetic chain and less throwing, or do you feel like Taiwan or even let's say Korea has a long way to go?
I would say it's getting better now. Like the younger generation, they believe that biomechanics, connected chain, but they just have to take time for the older generation to get it, and we still have to prove that's the right way to go. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I say a lot of those dinosaurs, those old school coaches are, I feel like unfortunately we're waiting for them to kind of just retire.
Yeah.
But some of them are learning and catching up, because at the end of the day, this it's not like they didn't know, it's just the science is new and we're all learning. Just a lot of them aren't learning what's most recent and coming out on all this information. Well, it's good to know that, we're all kind of struggling with the same thing and really learning how to better manage the stress you put on your arm. And I think baseball needs to do a lot better job with that. Next question. Healing from severe left shoulder injury, throwing 48 miles per hour with no pain, but there's weakness. Before I went from 50 to 88 miles per hour, but I'm back to being slow. How can I throw hard again? My weakness is with internal rotation. I can only pitch from 45 feet, super slow, throwing as hard as I can. Kind of wild to hear the difference in velocity there, right? 48 to 80, that's when I hear a difference in velocity almost twice the amount, I think there's got to be injury or someone's miscommunicating what's actually going on. But if you're having a big drop in fluctuation in velocity, I would be very concerned with injury, because here's the thing with the UCL, if you tear the UCL, about 50% of people who tear the UCL don't actually experience pain from it. So you could have a torn ligament in your arm and that would affect velocity. Studies show you lose external rotation when you have that, because you're tightening your arm up to protect it. And that would hurt your velocity, change all your biomechanics. So, and then it'd be confusing. You're like, why are my mechanics changing? Well, it's because you actually have an injury you're unaware of. So I would check on that and see, a doctor can tell you the integrity of your UCL, or, the strength. Also, you can look at grip strength and all the things we assess here at TopVelocity to see the integrity of the shoulder, or you can use the armcare.com assessment tools. Those are great. They can tell you the integrity of the shoulder. Like, do all those checks, and if it's healthy, then we're falling into biomechanics. You probably have a couple things going on when it's this traumatic. You have your biomechanics are just fluctuating all over the place. Like one day you're using your legs, next day you're not using your legs. One day you're staying closed, the next day you're flying open. And a lot of times that links to poor physical fitness. And the poor physical fitness isn't just making it hard for you to use the kinetic chain well, but it's fatiguing you quickly. So your legs shut off fast, and then you got to change, and then all your mechanics start to change, and you kind of fall into a little slump with your mechanics, and then you see that big change in velocity and mechanics. And let's ask Alex, like in Taiwan, do you find that pitchers are as obsessed about biomechanics as you see here in the States, or not as obsessed?
Yeah, like I always see the coach trying to move their arm position or the arm path. Like if the pitcher doesn't throw well in the weekend, or like in the past month, they will try to change their mechanics, even trying to accent to throw like lower hand and see if that.
So you're saying big emphasis, but probably not the right emphasis. So are you saying like, are you seeing in Taiwan more peer-reviewed or empirical research in biomechanics and coaches using that, or do you see more anecdotal, like coaches just going off their experience and what they were taught? What do you find?
I believe the coach rely on their experience more, because I saw them coach the kids like move the hand up and down, like that's how the coach throw, but not necessarily should be how
the body needs to move.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very much end of chain, end of movement corrections, which unfortunately are more of it's not as an effective way to teach the kinetic chain as making adjustments at the end.
Yeah.
There's actually a study that showed that when they looked at coaching pitchers, when you coach the beginning of the movement as opposed to coaching the end of the movement, you actually got more change in the biomechanics. So meaning if a coach worked on, say, your initial movements, your stride and your handbrake and your load, you actually saw pitchers changing their mechanics more than when you had them work on their arm path at the end of the movement. They actually saw less of a change. And that makes sense to me, because at the end of the movement, it's going so fast at that point. It's like a whip. This is accelerating so fast, and the beginning's such a slow part. And that's more than likely why it's easier to change that, because it's happening slower and it's actually having more effect on what's happening at the end. And that's why it's probably a better approach. So like you're saying is, even in Taiwan, you're seeing kind of these anecdotal coaches giving personal experiences, adjusting the end of the chain, which studies show aren't as effective in really improving the biomechanics of the athlete. So you're seeing that in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess not much different between Taiwan and America. So hopefully, we can make those changes. And I think that's probably why you've been excited to translate a lot of this into Mandarin, because you want to see a lot of this science-based, new science information getting into, the Asian cultures, right?
Yeah, right. And that's the only program I see that support by the science and prove that it help the pitcher to get the velocity.
That's perfect, man. I appreciate it being on, and I'm excited what he's doing with TopVelocity. So once again, if you want to learn more on the Mandarin side, it's topvelocity.net/Taiwan or TopVelocity Taiwan on Instagram or YouTube. And you can watch those if you have a friend who's from Taiwan or China that you think would like the information, send it to him once you see what he's done. All right, appreciate you being on the show. If you have a question, post it below. Send us as many questions as you have. We'd love to answer them on the show, and we'll see you the next time.